Are you a fan of the Spelljammer setting? Do you also like Shadowdark? If so, I've got just the thing for you. Hey folks, I'm William. This is Runeforged. Welcome to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the brand new Shadowdark campaign setting, Aetherdark, which at this very moment is available to back on Kickstarter. There'll be a link to do so down in the video description. I did just want to say this is not a sponsored video, but the creator did send me a free preview copy of what's available in the Kickstarter, which I very much appreciate. So thank you, Micah. I do also need to point out that I have not played Aetherdark, nor have I ever played in a Spelljammer campaign. And that's mostly because, typically I don't like the idea of mixing my science fiction with my fantasy. But while I may not personally be the target audience for Aetherdark, I imagine that there are several of you watching this channel that might really be interested in something like this. So I thought I'd go ahead and share with you guys today. All right, so at a very high level, what is going on with Aetherdark? And I think to answer that question, we really need to focus on like the four major pieces of content for the Kickstarter. The first of those is a pretty massive, like 300-page core rulebook, which basically has all of the rules that you will need to set your Shadowdark game in space. So that means that there are rules for ships, crew, space travel, and the various different enemies that you might encounter along the way. There are also a ton of different resources, mostly in the form of various different random tables that will help you with populating the ether, as well as various different nebulae and worlds that your characters might explore. And I imagine this goes a long way towards solving what I imagine is, maybe somewhat of a difficult issue in this type of campaign, which is making, space, which is, vastly just empty, seem interesting and varied for long enough to run an entire campaign. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on what's included in the core rulebook here in a minute. But there is also over on the Kickstart page, there is a link to a free quick start version of the rulebook. And as I understand it, it has pretty much everything that the large rulebook has in it, except it's missing a lot of the random tables and several of the various different enemies. But you actually get to see a pretty decent chunk of the book over on that quick start. So if that is interesting to you, definitely go check that out. All right, so the second major component of this Kickstarter is actually going to be a 150-page campaign setting book, which is called The Ring. It has details for 7 distinct worlds that are a part of this setting, as well as general information for the overall region in which these worlds reside. And of course, there's a map for each world, as well as the overall region, to give you a better understanding of what exactly is going on and where. It also details several of the major ongoing conflicts, as well as several different kind of smaller adventuring hooks that you can use to get your players more engaged in the setting. Again, a free preview of the Ring campaign setting is available over on the Kickstarter page if you'd like to check that out for yourself. The third major component of the Kickstarter is a short introductory campaign zine called the Syndicate. And when I first took a look at this, I assumed that this was going to be somewhat similar to like a Cursed Scroll zine that you might see out of the official Shadowdark line, but that's not really exactly what it is. It's really more details for how to run a very specific, probably antagonistic faction for your campaign, and includes several different potential encounters with that faction, but they aren't necessarily limited to a particular geographic region. They can really occur anywhere within the Astral Sea, which I think is very fitting for this type of a campaign. And the Syndicate also includes probably one of my favorite parts of the content that I've looked at so far, which is a level 0 gauntlet adventure, where the characters start off as prisoners, but they do like a prison break scenario, and they go on to commandeer the ship that they have been imprisoned on, which I think is a very, very cool premise for an adventure. Again, I'm not really super familiar with a lot of the genre conventions for like a Spelljammer type of campaign. This may be like a very classic trope that I'm just like not aware of, but I think it is a really excellent way to kick off this kind of campaign setting. And lastly, like the fourth major component of the Kickstarter, and this is something that I haven't really seen anyone do before, and it's very interesting to me. It includes 12 what is being called travelogues, and as far as I can tell, they're basically like short stories that are taking place in the world of Aetherdark, kind of highlights several of the various different locations and factions that you're going to be interacting with during the actual campaign. And I skimmed through a couple of them, and they are pretty interesting. Again, I'm not the target audience for this particular type of fiction, but I do think there's something really interesting about the idea of communicating the lore of the world for a tabletop RPG through like kind of in-game fiction. And I know this has been done before, but I haven't seen it done exactly like this. And I just thought it was a really interesting twist on kind of like your standard lore dump that you might get in a typical like setting book. And I'm kind of curious. So I think there's like maybe 4 or 5 of these travel logs available for free right now over on the Kickstarter. I would highly encourage you to go like check those out. And I'm really curious to know what your opinions are on this like method of conveying lore, because I do think it's really interesting. Okay, so if you are enjoying the video so far, please consider aiding me in my eternal struggle against the dreaded YouTube algorithm by crushing those like and subscribe buttons so you don't miss out on more exciting TTRPG content like this in the future. All right, so that's what's in the Kickstarter at kind of a high level, but I did want to talk about some specific things that I found particularly interesting. And I think the first thing I want to talk about is kind of the art. I will go ahead and put some of that on the screen as I'm talking right now. I did find the artwork for these books to be really cool and very much in line with the tone and setting of the game. I'm not going to go into it in too great of a detail. I'll have some images flickering across the screen here for you guys to look at. And I didn't recognize too many of the authors, but I did see Brandish Gilhelm in there, aka Hank Infernal, aka Runehammer. I'll make sure to put a link to his channel down in the video description for those of you who haven't seen it. He has a very distinctive style that I always really enjoy. But I just have to say, overall, I thought the artwork for this project was really, really cool. And definitely worth taking a look at. There are also extremely robust rules for playing Shadowdark in space. Definitely rules for pretty much everything that I could think of that might come up in a game, at least relatively often. So you've got moves for moving and pursuits, siege attacks, ramming actions, because obviously you have to have ramming actions, boarding actions. Rules for fighting especially large like space creatures, which is pretty cool. And I could go on and on and on about the various different rules, but just rest assured that it seems like most of the bases definitely seem to be covered. Also, I did see something that was kind of interesting to me. There were like these floating, because it's like I guess it's a type of one of the spaceships in the game, and they're called divine towers. So I guess these are basically like your divine caster powered ships. And I just thought they were really cool. Like, I'll show a piece of art up on the screen here. It's basically like, it literally is just like a floating divine tower, which is very, very cool to me, and really evoked imagery from, it doesn't look exactly the same, but it looks kind of similar, or reminded me of like the floating spaceship cathedrals from Warhammer 40k, which I'm a pretty big fan of. So I think that would be kind of cool to throw some 40k-ish elements into your Spelljammer campaign. I think that'd be pretty cool. And speaking of the various different ships and type of ships, the book spends quite a bit of time and pages outlining the various different, again, types and classes of ships available in the game. And it doesn't just give you like the stats for the various different ships. It actually has like pretty detailed drawings that help you understand like how the ship is being laid out. Again, I'll have pictures on the screen, but I just thought it was really cool that like for so many of these different ships, like they are actually all drawn out. Everything's laid out in a way that, at least to my untrained eye, I don't really know anything about ships, but it looks very cool and realistic. And it's definitely good fodder for your imagination in terms of how you might want to plan like a boarding action or defending your ship or something along those lines. I just think it's cool. Definitely let me know your thoughts on the ship drawings down in the comment section. I would say, like, if I had to offer criticism about what I have seen of Aetherdark so far, I mean, it's probably going to be a positive for a lot of people, but there's just a ton of stuff with all the various different material. For me personally, I found the amount of information to be a little bit overwhelming. For example, like the core rulebook for Aetherdark is like about like a little over 300 pages, which puts it very close to the length of the overall core Shadowdark rulebook. And this is really meant to be like, it's not a replacement, it's like supplementary information. So it's like being layered on top of the base Shadowdark rules. And to be fair, like a lot of those 300 pages are random tables and GM advice and game aids and stuff like that. But it is a lot of information. I feel like I would have to go through like not only the rule book, but also the various different setting books and stuff. Maybe not necessarily like the travel logs. Like I feel like those are truly like supplementary, like optional supplementary. But I feel like there's an awful lot of information that I would feel like I need to go through in order to start up a campaign in this campaign setting. And that would be, it would be like a prohibitive like barrier of entry for me personally. Now, like I said, this is very much a subjective thing. I'm sure there's plenty of you out there, and I've said this myself about the other Shadowdark materials, that if I just have a little bit more, I think we would be, better off for having that. But I think there definitely is kind of a line. And this is too much information for me to feel is easily digestible in the same way that the official Shadowdark products are. But it's definitely something to think about before you pick up Aetherdark for yourself. But having said all that, and with the acknowledgement that, again, I'm probably not the target audience for this type of campaign setting, it's very clear to me that a lot of time and care and love went into the creation of Aetherdark. And that really does come across when you're reading through this content. So if you'd like to check out Aetherdark for yourself, there is a link to the Kickstarter page down in the video description. As of the time that I'm filming this first impressions, the project has already exceeded its $5,000 goal. So it's definitely going to be funded. So that is good news for any of you out there who are considering picking this up for yourself. Yeah, I don't really know what else there is to be said. There is a ton of free preview content available for Aetherdark over on the Kickstarter page. So if you are even vaguely interested in Aetherdark, I do highly encourage you to hop over to the Kickstarter page and check out all of that free content, so you can get a better idea of whether or not this is something that you might be interested in picking up for yourself. But yeah, I think that's about it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day. Bye.